you need to make sure that you're someone who understands what AI is going to do and what it means. With AI, you don't need as many employees. You don't need as many people in a process because you're able to augment yourself and do a lot more and be a lot more productive. And I think overall, this is beneficial for society in the long run. Imagine if someone 30 years ago said, I'm not using the internet or I'm not using email, right? If you're saying that about AI, that is the position that you're going to put yourself in. And I think about AI quite a bit. And I always think about something that I heard once is that like humanity wasn't ready for the internet. There was a lot of chaos that has taken place because of the internet and a lot of chaos that we see now. And we're still trying to figure things out 30 years later, right? A lot of good has come from it, but a lot of bad. And I think it's kind of the same with AI. Like humanity is not ready to have AI yet, but it's here. So it's important to be someone that uses it and understands it. We laugh internally. We'll be like, "Hey, I prepared this document without AI. Just so you know, this is what it is," right? So it's almost like a badge of honor at a certain point. And then I go through later and I put it to the AI. I actually did write this myself with my own fingers, right?
Hi, I'm Denise Chaffin, and I am your podcast host for Talking TA. And today I am honored to have with me Joseph Burns. And Joseph is the CEO and founder of a company called Lupa. And Joseph, I'm going to let you introduce yourself. So, Joseph, please go ahead and give us a little bit about your background and what got you started with Lupa.
Perfect. First of all, Denise, thanks for having me. Really exciting to be here and really exciting to get to know you. So, yeah, as you said, I'm Joseph. I'm the CEO and founder of Lupa. At Lupa, we focus on helping companies build in Latin America and build teams there. So, we help them find talent and also pay and contract them as well. I started that business because I was in engineering, an engineer and a product manager, and had to build a team myself in Latin America when I worked at Rappi, and I didn't find that there were very many solutions that could fit what I was looking for. And it sort of started organically. And yeah, we've been around for over 3.5 years now. Been growing a lot. And yeah, really grateful to be here. And
We had a great conversation last week. And, one of the conversations that we talked about, or one of the topics we spoke about was the AI recruiter and how you feel you had shut it down. I guess you developed an AI recruiter and then shut it down. So let's start there. Tell us what happened.
yeah, so whenever I was working in Rappi, Rappi is the biggest non-public company or tech company in Latin America, so they'll be the next big IPO. Whenever I was working there, I got to a certain point where I took over recruiting. One of the guys that I really followed along my journey was Chris Cox, who was the former CPO at Facebook, and at one point he took over recruiting. And at a certain point, I just wasn't happy with what I was getting in terms of solutions. And I said, all right, this is the biggest, hairiest, ugliest problem that we have. So I'm going to take over. And while I was at Rappi, quite a few people actually left to start their own businesses. And they started to call me to help them with recruiting. I'm not a recruiter. Well, I wasn't a recruiter. I am now. And a lot of people called me to help them to build their companies because of the approach that I took. And my thoughts were around like, okay, how can we operationalize this as much as possible? How can we make sure that the quality is really good? I took a real product perspective to it. And whenever I decided that I was going to leave Rappi, I let our founders know, and they're the type of people that have built a $5 billion business. And they said, if you're going to leave here, we need you to build something bigger than a headhunter. Um, and so we worked through with them, and I had some ideas around AI and recruiting, and I had applied some level of AI to the recruiting that we were doing and decided to fundraise on this topic. And it was a very hot topic at the time. And it since then it died down and now it's picked up again. Everyone's building AI recruiters, but I was kind of in the first wave. And so my story there is that I raised money. I raised around $1 million to start the company from VC. And I think there were a couple things that I found. I think the first thing is that candidates don't like it, which is very, very, very important. I wish I would have interviewed more candidates early on because I think I focused more on the B2B side, so more focused on the founders, more focused on the recruiters in my product interviews, and not so concerned with the candidates. But I think that was like the very first thing that we noticed is that we were creating a negative selection bias from the candidates because candidates don't want to be interviewed by AIs, especially good ones. They find it to be somewhat insulting or dehumanizing. And I think the second one that was really important is we tried to use AI for the sourcing process, right? I'm going to be really nerdy here, but long story short is LLMs aren't really built for search engine purposes because you have to pay for tokens whenever you're building an AI, right? And so if you have to look at a bunch of profiles and return back a result, it ends up getting very expensive and very time consuming. So the other thing is we talked about sourcing a lot, and we knew that's a really time consuming part of the recruiting process. But I could never find or build an AI, and I'm still looking that is better than a good recruiter with a Boolean search, right? And so I think those were like two of the biggest challenges amongst many others that led me to say after a couple years, you know what? I think I made a mistake and I actually don't think this is a part of your business that you should leave totally up to AI. I use AI all the time in my recruiting business, but I'm very picky with how I use it because when you start taking humans out of human resources, you're going to run into problems.
Then you have just resources, right? Well,
Resources are good, but you need human ones too, right?
and you mentioned too that AI in recruiting kind of creates some risk and attracts, as you said, desperate candidates. So, what are the risks? Or I should say, what risks are people overlooking in the rush to automate hiring?
Yeah, so I think that everyone should really plant themselves firmly in the idea that your company is dependent on how good the people you are, right? If you hire great people, you're going to have a great company. If you don't hire good people, you're going to have a very hard time, right? And when I think about AI, I think that it should mostly be used for lower leverage activities, right? That are time consuming, that maybe aren't so important. So I think like the big risk really is that very good candidates do not like being interviewed by an AI. So what can happen there is that you can create a negative selection bias. We did some testing on this where we'd have a human run the search and an AI run the search. And while the human obviously took a little bit more time and energy to do things, we were finding that they were yielding a much better result. And hiring is very important. Like you wouldn't leave an AI to decide who your husband or wife is going to be. You probably shouldn't leave them to decide who your coworker is going to be. And I think the second one that is really heavy in terms of risk is you end up appealing to people that know how to game an AI. It's very easy to trick a machine, right? So all you got to do if you're being interviewed by an AI is read the job description and talk to another AI about what you should say to this AI and what they're going to like, and you can spit it out. So you lose a lot of that human connection and you end up hiring people or selecting people that are able to cheat AIs, right? And I don't know if that's a great indicator. I mean, someone that does understand AI is very useful in the job market, right? But often I find that there's a lot of gamification of these sort of tools that are relying too much on automation, right?
So then you talk about augmentation too versus automation. Let's dive into that a little bit and how Lupa is using AI today and what makes it a tool to make recruiters more human instead of replacing them.
Yeah, so I think we've all in the recruiting space run into situations where we're recruiting for a role that we don't know everything about, right? Not every recruiter understands every single role that they're trying to hire for. And one of our core beliefs in Lupa and what we know contributes to people coming back to us and what we know contributes to our reputation is that people hire the right person, right? So I think that a lot of companies actually get into interviews and they sort of wing it. You should have a very specific process for what your CTO is doing or what your head of HR is doing or what your CEO is doing or what, I don't know, your head of sales is doing, right? So those people need to be asking different questions and focused on different things. So I find that people tend to maybe ignore that part of it and there isn't as much planning around it. So one of the things that we do a lot with our recruiters is okay, we have a recording of the kickoff call that we had with the client. We have a job description here. We've done some research on our own. What are the questions that we should be asking in order to filter out candidates or figure out which candidates are really strong matches? So I think like augmenting the recruiter in terms of their intelligence and creating another base for them that is going to be useful for them to make a really good decision is very important. And then the other thing that we do with our clients is we've basically looked at, okay, what are the best recruiting processes out there? I've read, I don't know, dozens of recruiting books, and I've sort of created my own brain that can create a interview process for our clients. So if not all of my clients follow it, sometimes they follow part of it, but at least creating a game plan for how are we going to talk to these candidates? What questions are we going to ask them? What answers are we looking for? And are we making sure that we're covering all the bases is very important. So we'll take, okay, this specific role, what are the questions that the CTO should ask? What should the CEO ask? What should the HR person ask? And we can create a really good matrix and scorecard for that. And then, of course, we look at everything and we edit it before we actually use it, right? So we're not just setting it on autopilot and throwing it into production. But we found that like the augmentation of knowledge and being able to create a very quality selection process that really chooses the right person is important because as a headhunter, what makes people come back is they say, you know what? Denise is my best employee. Where did we get her? Well, we got her from Lupa. Okay, well, we'll come back to them because we know that our product as a headhunter is the candidates that we present and the recruiters that we're putting in front of the clients. So if we can help them pick the right candidates and we can augment the knowledge of the recruiter, I think that makes it really, really useful. And it's a key aspect of what we do in Lupa and how we use AI. Probably the most important. We have a lot of different stages that we use. I have my own AI developer on the team that helps me build out these workflows for us. But I found that that one has been one that's impacted my business a lot. Why? Because we're picking better candidates and we're helping our clients make better decisions.
There's other companies that I have interviewed who have developed some questions, if you would, or created like a talent strategy formula for new positions. And as they're working with their hiring manager, they are asking these questions. I mean, that's kind of been around for a while, asking the hiring manager, oh, okay, give us the questions you'd like us to ask the candidates. The thing is, though, is now they want to incorporate that though into the AI screening with the AI chatbots or AI agents or whatever you want to call them. So how are we going to then differentiate, especially if there is some good software out there? How are we going to differentiate though between the better AI screeners, if you would, that are going to ask those questions and are going to obviously be taking using the note-taking software to relay back to the hiring managers versus a recruiter doing it?
Yeah, I think that there was a classic study and classic, let's say, situation that took place where they were trying to build an AI that could beat humans in chess. They eventually did it. That could build an AI that could beat humans in Go, which is a really popular, difficult game to understand. Um, but what would always win was when you take an AI and an expert and put them together, right? And I think like that is probably very, very true across the board and definitely true in recruiting. So I think that I prefer my recruiters to be working with AI, but I want to rely on their expertise too. So I think when you can merge man or woman and machine, that's when you generally get the best results, whether it's winning in chess or winning in selection.
Hmm. Interesting. Well, and you've built a personal brand machine around your LinkedIn account, you had
Mhm.
mentioned as well. So
Yeah.
let's talk about the tech stack and the strategy behind that.
Yeah, so one thing that's really important for me is being able to get our message out there, right? So my company is very mission driven. Myself, I live in Latin America. I've spent a lot of time there. And for me, there's nothing more important than like spreading the word of all the talented people that are in Latin America that have supported me a ton and are my neighbors and my colleagues and my coworkers, right? And so what we wanted to do is build a strategy around how can we spread as much awareness around this topic as possible and how can we be a trusted authority on that. The other side of it is in recruiting the toughest part about scaling a headhunting business is the sales side and getting meetings, right? There is people are inundated with cold outreach on the side. Why? Because probably since we started this podcast, someone has started another headhunter, maybe two or three people, right? So it's really hard to differentiate yourself. And I found that a lot of the customers, the reason that they want to work with us is because we're experts. But how do we demonstrate that? How can we show that on a consistent basis? And so what we did is we started to write really detailed content. I probably spend more than half of my working hours focusing on how can I get the word out there about our mission and what we do. And so what we've been able to do is develop some level of virality around everything that we're doing because we've been able to find topics that resonate with our audience, but also lean into our particular knowledge space, right? So what we know is that whenever someone has already seen me before, meaning they've seen my post, they've liked my post, they've commented on my post, they've added me as a friend, they've been watching what I'm doing, they're much more receptive to talk to me than if we just email them cold. Because emailing someone cold, maybe 1 out of 10,000 people are going to respond. It's kind of become a game where everyone's doing it, and so it doesn't work for anyone anymore. So what we've done is we've actually used AI to scrape the profile of every person that will like, comment, share, or engage with my content, right? And then what we do is we take their profile, we put it into a categorization prompt that we build in AI that looks at them and says, okay, this is a person that is a US founder, or this is a person that is a LATAM HR leader, or this is a person that's a candidate, right? And we've developed a bunch of personas based on the ICPs, and we base the ICPs on what type of message we think that we should share with them, right? Because we want to make sure that we're sharing things that are relevant to them. And then what we've done is we basically grab everything that's happening on my profile, we categorize everyone, and we've created a prioritization system of like, these are the people that are important to our business and are likely to respond to us because they're very engaged with us. And then from there, if they're maybe more on the sales side, which is a little bit harder to bring in clients than to bring in candidates, we basically send them something that's very manual and very personal, right? In order to get a meeting with them. And then if it's a candidate, it's something that's a little bit more automated in terms of just letting them know that Lupa's out there and we have jobs. And we found that that step just allows us to use AI to be able to be more personable with our messaging and to have some sort of categorization because it can be a bit overwhelming. I mean, sometimes I wake up and I have 3,000 requests in my inbox, right? So how can I triage those and make sure that I'm sending them to the right people on my team? Because I have a very good and big team behind me, and I want to make sure that I'm focusing on what I need to focus on and then also sharing things with them that are going to benefit them and having them do their part. Myself, I don't handle the recruiting. My job is more around managing the business at this point.
So, what are some of your challenges right now with, I would say, maybe mismatches, if you would, with global hiring, especially now that you're in Latin America? Well, you're in Mexico, right?
Yeah, I'm in Mexico City, and I lived in Bogota for 4 years. I also spent a couple years in Brazil. So I think there's a couple challenges in global hiring that are very common. I think number one is that everyone treats Latin America as one entity, right? So Argentina is as different from Mexico as Germany is from Italy, right? They're very different cultures, very different people, very different priorities, very different strengths, very different weaknesses, very different way of work. So I think a lot of people have that challenge when hiring in Latin America, and we consult quite a bit on that side. And I think the other one is that there's just certain small cultural differences that maybe people aren't aware of. So another thing that we do at Lupa is whenever we actually have a client or candidate that's their first time working with a US company or a US company that's their first time working with someone in Latin America, we actually just do a particular training for them before each of them start to let them know like, hey, Americans are a little bit different and this is how we deal with things and this is how we communicate and this is how we talk about things, right? One example in the States, we jump into meetings and we don't really say hello and we just get started. And that is very shocking for someone in Latin America, right? But I think when it comes to cultural differences, if you can just create an understanding from both sides, which is what we aim to do in our onboarding process that we carry, it makes everything more successful. And we don't make any extra money off doing the onboarding, but we do see on the other side that, the candidates are more successful in their roles, the clients are more successful with handling their team and understanding the differences, and they end up staying with us longer. And it fits in with our mission of creating as many opportunities as we can with people in Latin America. Because if you have a good experience the first time you hire, you're going to come back. If you have a bad experience, you're not going to come back.
Yeah,
And
that's
you know,
true.
we have to make sure that the quality is as high as possible because I would much rather work with a client and have a very long-term relationship with them than be bringing on new clients all the time. And what we found is that a lot of clients now are just saying, okay, Joe, you and Lupa, you take everything that has to do with Latin America, and they really see us as strategic partners because they know that we care about the quality of what they're doing. So I think the challenges in summary are like, don't treat Latin America like it's all just one homogenous group of people because it's not. And the other thing is make sure that you're understanding particularities of each of those countries and each of those cultures whenever you're onboarding your employees, and also understanding what makes you different from them as well. And I think if we can build more empathy between our candidates and our clients, they're going to have better results.
Yeah, my company has been focused a lot on the semiconductor market over the last number of years.
Oh, wow.
And so we've run into some issues trying to navigate cultural differences, for example, with Asia Pacific or even EMEA at times. So I get what you're saying. It's a different market, and you have to learn the culture of the you have to learn the culture of the people you're going to be working with. And then, like you said, you need to train them on your culture as well so they know what to expect. Going back to Joseph, to the AI hype on all of this, right? Why do you think so many VC-backed AI recruiting startups are building the same flawed type of systems and models?
Yeah, so I think that there's a certain effect. I mean, I think it's important to understand how VCs work, right? So VCs will pick a particular thesis that they like, right? And they'll say, all right, I'm going to bet on this thesis. I'm going to find every founder that has the same thesis. I'm going to pick whether, depends on how aggressive they are, the best 50%, the best 10%, or all of them, right? And I'm going to invest in every single one of them with the hope that one of them will work out, right? So obviously, it makes sense. Anyone that works in recruiting is playing with AI and using AI. And I think we have an obsession with AIing everything, right? And also, recruiting is a big, big business. It's $1 trillion market, right? So people are going to go after really big markets, and every company has this problem, right? So I think on one side, it's like, okay, someone likes the thesis, and then VCs are very copycat. So if one VC is going after that side of it, the other VC is going to go after that side of it, and the other VC and the other VC. And so it's this sort of thing where everybody just sort of piles in. I do think that there are going to be very successful applications of AI in recruiting, but there are certain ones that I really don't think are very good, especially when hiring very high level people. Now, if you're hiring a massive role or a lower level role that you're hiring many people, like maybe someone in a call center or something that has very high turnover, I think this is very useful because it's not exactly a deep process that you're running. But if you're looking to hire your next engineer or looking to hire your next sales manager, I would just be very cautious because of the risks I talk about before about negative selection bias, and also people that are good at gaming the AI.
Ugh, yeah, and we're hearing more about that. When HireVue first started way back, I don't know what year they started, 2013 maybe, 14, 15. There were a lot of candidates who were turned off by the idea that they would be doing, even a video interview, much less having AI recruit interview them. But the one thing that it was helpful for, like you mentioned, was like the high volume positions where you had multiple roles that you were trying to fill for manufacturing, or maybe at the time it was data centers. They were looking for, gosh, how many people were they looking for at the time to do cabling and routers and setting up systems? So they had a number of the same, almost like evergreen roles. And that it too helps, I think, with when you're using like a video format or even AI, it is going to be helpful because then you can work through a lot of the interviews. You can process out the people who don't make it through the first interview, that type of thing. But to your point, there's a almost like a line that you can draw in the sand of the people who are going to be more open to that type of interview versus people who are not. I think we're still in that mode of distrust, correct?
Yeah. One thing I've talked about with my team, my content team works like tirelessly on trying to find ways to connect with our user base, right? Or our potential clients, which are candidates or companies, right? And one thing I've told them is like, I don't want to be the guy that says that AI in recruiting is wrong, right? I want to be the guy that says these are the trade-offs that you need to consider. And these are the implications of what we found. And make sure that you're acutely aware of them. And if you are making decisions that are going to prioritize efficiency over quality, just know what you're getting yourself into and make sure that you're informed, right? I'm not an absolutes kind of person. I tend to think in probabilities everywhere. It drives my family and my girlfriend and my friends crazy. But I think that it's good to understand that you are increasing the probability of making a poor selection. You are increasing the probability that you might lose out on a good candidate whenever you make things too inhuman, right?
No, you're correct. Exactly correct. I think that, well, with other people, like I said, that I've spoken with as well, who have shared what they believe is going to be the success of AI versus the fallout, if you would, for some of the companies that are making software now that's just not going to fly. But again, I think the high velocity positions, and somebody referred to high velocity versus high volume. High velocity is retail positions, hospitality positions, restaurants, things like that. She referred to that as high velocity versus high volume would be more maybe on the manufacturing side or automation side. If you're working for example, a car manufacturer, all of the people, of course, now there's a lot of robots that are going in there too, but the people who are working in there, those are going to be more of the high volume roles. And then the other industries, I mean, I'm kind of, drawing a blank right now. But I think as well, and you make a good point about it, it's utilizing what AI can do now for you to replace some of the roles, some of the redundant tasks, and we talk about that all the time, and that it's a tool, and we need to use the tool for its capability because it is gonna save us. But here's the thing that's coming up a lot for our industry, as you well know, the future of the recruiter role. And that's like the big, everyone's like biting their nails over that. For someone scared of being replaced by an AI bot, what should they really be worried about, do you think?
I think that you need to make sure that you're someone who understands what AI is going to do and what it means, right? So with AI, you don't need as many employees. You don't need as many people in a process because you're able to augment yourself and do a lot more and be a lot more productive. And I think overall this is beneficial for society in the long run, right? But I think it's important that okay, this is coming, right? Imagine if someone 30 years ago said, I'm not using the internet or I'm not using email, right? If you're saying that about AI, that is the position that you're going to put yourself in. And I think about AI quite a bit, and I always think about something that I heard once is that, like, humanity wasn't ready for the internet, right? We weren't ready. There was a lot of chaos that has taken place because of the internet and a lot of chaos that we see now, and we're still trying to figure things out 30 years later, right? A lot of good has come from it, but a lot of bad. And I think it's kind of the same with AI. Like, humanity is not ready to have AI yet, but it's here, right? So it's important to be someone that uses it and understands it. I worked in social media and I myself I avoid it, right? I know that I need to limit myself on these sorts of things or else I'm going to lose my ability to think and engage and form my own opinions, right? So I'm aware of how it works. Same thing with AI. So we laugh internally. We'll be like, "Hey, I prepared this document without AI. Just see this is what it is," right? So it's almost like a badge of honor at a certain point, and then I go through later and I put it through the AI. Yeah, I actually did write this myself with my own fingers, right? I'm speaking these words to you right now, Denise. This is not an AI that's talking to you. Now, I might have prepared myself for this podcast with an AI, but this is me speaking right now.
That is crazy. Oh my gosh. It's funny you say that because I think some of the issues we've had just with the internet over the last 30 plus years, it's been probably, well, yeah, it's been 30 years, has been also on the security side. You talk about people who are taking advantage of AI, writing their resumes, trying to match things up, trying to stay in touch with the AI bots that are interviewing them. It's interesting though, because we run into the same thing with the internet in general. I remember when people were taking tests and they would have like little cheat sheets for their tests. And not only that, but now we have to worry about people who are breaking into our email system. I've had my email system broken into by somebody from another country. Last week, I received a proposal because we're a government contractor. I received a proposal from some guy who claimed that he was with the Bureau of Reclamation in Washington, D.C. Long story boring, turned out the guy was it was a scam. So we have to watch out. All other things come up through the internet, people emailing you documents that you shouldn't open. We're still struggling with the security around all that stuff, right? And now you put AI on top of it and the security issues we're gonna run into there, it's overwhelming. I think that's where a lot of people are kind of like, "Oh," more afraid now of AI just because we're all shell shocked just from the issues we've run into just with the internet, like you're saying.
Yeah, I think the main thing is it's going to make it very difficult to know what's real and what's not. Recently, I watched a movie called Mountainhead that came out. It was about like this chaotic world where people couldn't discern what was AI and what's not. And I don't think we're far off from that stuff. So I think that if you understand AI and you use it, it's going to be a lot easier for you to identify things that maybe don't add up, right? So I think no matter how old you are, it's important, right? That you're understanding these tools and you're using them because it can be very useful and it can really help you. AI has had a ton of really, really good contributions to my life. One thing that I do every single week is I have a half hour meeting with an AI, right? Where I sit down and I just talk about everything that happened, right? Every single thing that I can think of that happened, everything that I want to work on, any problems that I have, any successes, whatever. And I put all of those documents together, all those transcripts, and I talked to the AI. I said, "Imagine that you were someone that is much stronger than me as a CEO or has built a much bigger, much more successful company. What are the things that you would be telling me?" Right? And it helps me so much. Also, like I'm a big proponent of therapy, right? So I send every single one of my employees, I pay for their therapy. I go to therapy myself, been going for 6 years. But my therapist, she a lot of times says things that are too like supportive for me. Like they just doesn't give me the harsh truth. And so what I do is I put all the recordings of our sessions into the AI. Say, all right, talk to me like you're my older sister, right? What are the things that you actually would tell me to do, or what are the, or like, give me some actual measurable things that that you suggest that I should do. And so for me, like AI has improved my life a ton, and I use it in lots of things. But again, I'm able to maybe navigate it a little better than the average person and understand it a little better because I use it so much and I've actually gone and learned about it and know how the systems actually work. That's part of my background. I used to build search engines and AI teams for a living, so I understand it at a deeper level. Not to say you have to understand it like that, but understand it and use it, right? Don't just use it blindly or just hear it blindly.
I think you're like the second person that I've met that started out in engineering and transitioned to recruiting. There was another guy up in Idaho, I don't remember his name now, it was a long time ago, but anyway, so that's an interesting twist. I'm sure there's others.
I think for me, like the joy about it is helping people find a job, right? Like, that feeling is amazing, right? So I think that, like, for me, that was the appealing part of just, like, I like to help people, right? And I think it was a really great and impactful way to do it. I interrupted you. What were you saying? I'm
Oh, I was
sorry.
gonna say, what would you say to founders who are considering using AI only tools to build their teams with all of this?
Well, I would say go through the interview process yourself, right? See what it's like, right? And then also do an A/B test, right? Look at it from a long-term lens, I would say. Have some searches that are run completely by the AI and have some searches that are run by human beings and look at the key metrics around acceptance rate or the quality of the candidate or their performance once they enter. I would say just think about that part of it. And then the other side of it is be cautious, right? Know what the trade-offs are. Know that you might get more speed and less resources going into this hire, but you're also risking, like I said, a negative selection bias. And I don't know if it's worth it, right? So I would ask, is a mistake worth it for the speed that you're trying to get, right? So I would say like look first into how are you going to make sure that AI can help your process to be better and more human and have a better measurement of what is success and what is a good candidate rather than just sending the AI off to do the hard work for you.
Correct. Correct. No, you're absolutely correct. I think data analytics as well will be important right now to do exactly what you're talking about when it comes to measuring the successes on both sides. The AI interviews, versus the human interviews. I think data analytics will be the big, what do you call it, revealer, if you would, of the outcome and how successful we're going to be, and also to make the adjustments between utilizing AI for interviews versus humans. Having some data around this, I just don't think there's enough data yet to really give people a better understanding of where some of the fallacies are going to be with using AI for interviews, whether it's initial interview, whether it's the second interview. I'm not sure how deep some of these software platforms are going, with respect to utilizing AI for the interview process. Do like one of the companies that we interviewed at a conference said that they were actually taking their AI tool to the next level to do the first 2 rounds of interviews. So I'm just kind of wondering what data we're gonna have around the successes for some of the software versus using the humans. And going back to what you said earlier, utilizing humans, but also utilizing humans to create good content, good strategy, good meetings with the hiring managers, empowering the recruiters to really take a front seat as a recruiter so they get more of that at the what would you call it? Uh, Visibility with their leadership teams, having a seat at the table, as they say, right? So
Yeah, and I would guess that for 99% of founders, that there are much better lower hanging fruit or much more attractive fruit that they can pick with using AI than selecting their team, right? So I would say once you've exhausted every other thing in your organization, that might be one of the last ones you want to touch. Because, like I said, your company depends on having people that fit in with you and your culture and your business and that really understand and are experts. And I just wouldn't take the risk.
So, Joseph, in closing, if you could give one piece of advice to TA leaders navigating today's market, what would it be?
I think that the most important thing is to not forget the humanity, right? Don't forget about the human beings on the other side. And I think, of course, you have to level yourself up on the AI side and understand it yourself, but don't let it be a substitute for you, right? Be the person that's going to push the organization forward and teach people about AI and know about AI. Don't just rely on it to do all of your work because you might not have a job.
There you go. Exactly. And I guess the final question, what's your boldest prediction around the future of hiring in AI?
My boldest prediction. I think, well, I think what you're going to see is you're going to see a violent swing back of the pendulum around all of this stuff around AI. And it's going to be one of those things that we look back on and say, I can't believe we wanted robots to make these decisions for us. Um, Maybe I just want that because it's in my business interest, but I really do strongly believe that after spending 2 years looking very, very deeply into this stuff and trying to build something in that space myself. So we'll see if I'm right or not. Okay.
My prediction is we'll finally see AI as a tool to help us personally, individually with our jobs, but it's not going to be something that we use for decision making, whether it's hires or any other decision, big decision that we have to make, because we need to focus on the fact that it's a tool and it's not a decision making human with ingenuity, creativity, and just the human mind. So that's my prediction. But anyway,
I like that.
yeah, thank you so much. This is super helpful. And I think it's great that you're working across the borders. I love it. I want to stay in touch
Perfect.
for and much success to you and to Lupa.
Cool.
How can people reach you?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm Joseph Burns. You can also just search Joseph Burns or Joseph Burns Lupa anywhere. And yeah, I'm always available. My company is lupahire.com. So if you're looking to hire and you're curious about hiring in Latin America, you can book a consultation with me right there. And my promise to you is to share as much information as I can and help you to increase the probability that if you are hiring near shore, that you do it right, right. So my main goal there is to make sure that you're successful in that venture, and willing to share my knowledge and help in any way possible.
Very good. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. All right, Joseph.
Bye bye.
Thank you. All right.